Hello, everyone. This is Kerwin, and welcome to another episode of What's Happening in Travel. The Kushra is not here today, but this is episode 100. Holy moly. Can't believe that we actually made it to episode 100. Probably would have made it here a long time ago, but, all kinds of stuff happens in travel, right? Now, my background today is a picture of the Caramoan Islands, and I went there, I don't know, it's a few years ago. And getting to the Caramoan Islands is they're in the Philippines and it's a journey. So first I had to fly into Manila. Then we flew in a town called Legazpi. Then we took a 3-hour car ride to this port. Then we got on a boat. Now, this is not like a ferry service that you see, those huge ferries. This is like a little boat. And we get in this boat, they put our bags in, and you're holding on for dear life. And the water is choppy. And the guy who's driving the boat, he is like, I don't know, maybe a teenager still. And so, of course, he's all mucho gusto and he's going, and he doesn't care. And we're going chop, 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 chop as you go through the water. And you get there like an hour and a half later, and it seems like 10 hours, but it's beautiful. Past like the mountains on the side. Now, coming back from there, the water was calm and it was a completely different experience. But so this is in the Caramoan Island. There's actually a resort here. I was standing at the resort taking this picture from the resort. But as we talk about that, today's episode, I want to talk about travel insurance, because we don't think about things when we travel. So I told you about that amazing journey, right? So I took an airplane to the Philippines. I was actually in the UK when I did it. So I did the UK to Dubai, and then I did Dubai to Manila. And then I had to go Manila to, so that was one airline, Emirates. Then I had to take another airline from Manila, Cebu Pacific, down to Legazpi. Then we had to get on a car, or the minivan, and drove for like 3 hours. Then we get on this boat, and then we're finally there. Now, that's a lot. That's like day to at least 2 days of travel. Luckily, I think we had spent one night in Manila, so that was good. So we had a hotel, and it was a press trip. But it's very far to get to. Anything can happen. I've traveled and I've gotten sick. I went to China, and we went out and we had this. We wanted to find this really nice place with local food. Well, I got food poisoning. And so we're coming back, and I spent most of the time in the lab on the way back. So much so that we were landing, and the flight attendant was knocking on the door telling me to get out of there. I went to where was it? I went to Mexico, and in Mexico, I ate some street food. I think it was like a stew or something, and I got sick from that. I went to now, I mean, I travel a lot, right? And I've been to 145 territories / countries, which equates to 108 UN countries, flown 189 airlines, right? So you figure something is going to go wrong at some point. So it's not that you get sick on every trip, and it's always food poisoning. Because the trip I did, thankfully for me, it's always food poisoning. The trip I did, I flew from Sri Lanka to the Maldives. Imagine landing in the Maldives, and the second night you're there, your stomach is not working. And so I was sick for 2 days. They came to look for me because they're like, we haven't heard from you since you checked in. And I said, oh, I'm so sick. And they said, would you like some tea? And they got me some tea. And so like in about the next day, I was feeling much, much better. But I lost 2 days. Now I have travel insurance, and I have an annual plan for travel insurance. I've actually had 3 different companies in the past, and I have now settled on Trawick International. Reason why I chose Trawick is the other companies didn't cover COVID for Texas. So one of the things you have to make sure when you sign up for these travel insurance policies, make sure whatever state you're living in, or whatever country you're living in, the travel insurance will cover you. So if you're in the UK, it's a different travel insurance than if you're in the US, you got to go, right? And I'm going to leave you a link. It's Trawick International, or if you go to passrider.com/travel insurance, you'll find information about travel insurance from there. That's actually a slightly different company. I have two companies. I have the one, passrider.com/travel insurance, and Trawick. And I'll leave the link for Trawick because it's kind of long and I stupidly didn't make you a link so you can hear what the link is. But it's important that you have travel insurance. Like right now in New York, there are fires, not in New York, but in Canada. And the wind have blown all the bad smoke and smell over down to New York. And so you have all this smoke and all that kind of stuff in New York at the moment. So the airports, I think LaGuardia had already closed for a little bit, but I think they're open again. But it's going to happen tomorrow again. And so your travel plans are going to be disrupted. So all your hotels and all this kind of stuff that you've booked, you're going to have issues with it. Yeah, so I have an annual policy, and it's easier to have an annual policy than to do a per trip. Because, for example, some of the trips you may pay like $60, $70 per trip. And the annual thing is about $300 or so to do it annually. So it actually makes sense for you if you're going to travel a lot, just to do an annual trip. Now, if you notice, whenever you go to book on an airline's website, at the end, they always give you an option to get trip insurance, which is normally like $30, $40. And what happens is that they, like myself, get a commission from it. Now, I'm not telling you about trip insurance because I get a commission. I'm telling you about trip insurance because it's important. I was saying how I normally get food poisoning partly, but a friend of mine, they were somewhere in the Amazon, and her husband, he went back to get his camera on the ship or the boat that they were on, and he slipped. And when he slipped, he threw his back out. And then they had to take him from there to a doctor locally where they were. Then after he was able to move, then they medevaced him to Canada, I think is where he is. And they had, I think it was American Express's insurance company that they had. And they were able to take care of that. The other thing too is that, now one thing with travel insurance is interesting because sometimes the companies won't take the travel insurance. They will, you need cash, but the travel insurance company will usually reimburse you. So the first thing we need to do is to contact the travel insurance company. They normally have a number, and you say, hey, here's what's happening. How do I get covered? Then typically they will contact the hospital, and everything will go from there. But if not, you still need to have some money with you, because sometimes they won't touch you unless they have pure hard cash or something like that. During COVID, when I went to St. Martin required that you had travel insurance. And so you had to buy the travel insurance before you can get the entry permit to come into the country. That was like $15, I think it was. And one of the weird thing was that it was set up so that if you are transit in the country, so I was thinking I was going to like Saba from St. Martin. And when I got the Sabre, I had to apply for another entry to come back in. And when I was coming back in, it was asking me for the insurance again. I'm like, I already have the insurance. So they didn't have it all quite worked out. And so but I was able to tell the lady that, well, I already have this insurance here. And it's all I did, I just flew from one country to the next, spent a few hours, and now I'm flying right back to that same country. And so they kind of understood what was going on. And she realized that Emma was already covered. But the issue there was that they don't want you to bankrupt the system, right? Because if you are sick and you need medical assistance, they need to be able to get paid for it. And that's why they have you do the travel insurance. whenever people talk about insurance, everyone thinks it's a scam, but insurance is not a scam. The reason why, whenever you try to make a claim, and I've made, I think I've only made one claim, and actually, interesting enough, I did the claim, and then I got this, like it was years ago, and I got this email recently that said, there's a class action lawsuit, but it's a class action law. And I was like, Chicago, why would I have gone to the doctor in Chicago? And apparently I was sick in Chicago once and I had insurance. So I went to a doctor and it was covered. But that company, that the hospital or the private firm that I went to is involved in a class action lawsuit. And so I got a letter about the class action lawsuit. It's really weird, really random. But travel insurance is extremely important, and especially now we're talking about New York, that they have some fires in Canada, and the fires have blown the fumes and stuff like that over to the northeastern United States. So pretty much a lot of the northeastern United States, including New York, and I saw pictures of people in Philadelphia as well, is basically in a haze, a brown haze, and the air quality is terrible. They're telling people not to go outside, telling you to wear your N95 mask. So, because of COVID, a lot of us have a N95 mask and they're available. So people are wearing masks again to protect themselves from the fumes and stuff like that, because it's actually very toxic. But it's crazy. Now, normally the airlines will issue a thing that says, hey, and if you're flying on through or between these cities, you can get a waiver. I haven't seen any waiver yet. So, but typically what will happen is that you normally don't have to go through your insurance, because the airlines they're usually the first ones to say, we have a waiver. And once they have a waiver, it means you can change your flight. Now, that normally doesn't take care of the hotels, doesn't take care of your ground transportation and things like that. So this is why it is good to have travel insurance. And now some of these things are not covered, right? I don't know if this is going to be covered under travel insurance, but what you have to do is call. Remember I was talking about, I'm in Texas, and so COVID was not covered under the policy that I have. So you have to make sure, and I had to switch from that company, because if they don't cover me in Texas and for COVID, what's the point of having it in the first place? So I had to switch to a company that covered me regardless of where I'm from. And so whenever you get the insurance policy, they send you a thing that is actually the entire policy, and it tells you what you're covered for. So for example, this one I did is called Safe Travel Single Trip. It says comprehensive coverage for trip cancellation, trip interruption, emergency medical, and post-departure travel coverage. Post-departure, which means if you've already left and you have issues and you have to come back quicker than you need to. It says pre-existing medical condition waiver available. So if you have a pre-existing medical condition, you can fill out a waiver that will allow you. Waiver just means you have to pay a little extra, so they cover you. U.S. resident traveling within the United States and abroad, up to 75,000 secondary emergency medical coverage, which I'm not sure, but I think secondary means that's after whatever, if you had a different kind of coverage that would take care of it. So some of the stuff that's in here, you always have to ask about it. Airline ticket exchange fee benefit, U.S. residents traveling within the United States or abroad. Rates for Arkansas, Missouri, and Pennsylvania are listed on page 3, and also state rates are available on page 4. So this was just a plan highlight, and it just gives you an idea. So it's always important to make sure you read what you're going to get before you get it. So what I got for this particular one, and typically what they're going to ask you for is they ask you for where you go, where are you located, where are you going, when are you leaving, when are you come back, what's the trip deposit date, which is initial trip payment date is the first date you made the payment. So typically it's the day you're buying it, how many people are traveling, and it also wants your birth date, the cost of the trip, and the state. because the cost of the trip actually varies based on your birth date. So this particular one, I said I was born in 1994. And what they did, they came up with, see how much they said. I'm going to tell you how much it said. I thought I had the amount here, but okay. So this one was for $28.54 was the coverage. And I'm covered for 75,000 for emergency accident and sickness medical expense. $1,000 for baggage and personal effects, baggage delay up to 12 hours or more. So if my baggage delay for more than 12 hours, I can get $200. Trip delay, $600 up to $200 per day for delays for 12 hours or more. If there's a misconnection of 3 hours or more, I can get $500. And if my trip is interrupted, I can get 150% of the insured trip cost up to $21,000. This particular trip, I said it was $700. Trip cancellation, 100% of the insured trip cost up to $14,000. So if you have to cancel your trip and it's covered under the cancellation reasons, then you won't have to pay anything. So for $28 for a $700 trip, I don't really have to worry about it, right? So that's the kind of stuff that's good about trip insurance. Now, if like I said, lots of people have trepidations about trip insurance. They have all kinds of things because this happened to their friend, and when it happened to people are right. You ask them a question, they're like, "Oh yeah, this happened to my friend, so I'm not doing it." And even my own friends, I tell them to get travel insurance, but they don't. But if you do a calculation, whatever your calculations are, that it's not worth it, then for you, it's not worth it. For me, it's peace of mind. I get an annual policy. I never have to worry about the insurance side of things. And if something happens, I know that I can get some type of reimbursement. I actually had another situation where I was in the club in Houston. I had my iPad with me. By the time I got to the plane, I didn't have my iPad with me. And I only realized it after the airplane had pushback. I was able to contact the club and said, did anyone report an iPad, that they found an iPad, and I didn't get a report. So I know I had it in the club because I saw it. But by the time I got to the plane, I didn't. So I must have left it in the club. And so I had to file a claim for it. Now, the claim didn't cover the full cost of the iPad. I think it covered like 80% of it. But at least I was able to not spend, have to spend the full cost of a new iPad to get. So, things are going to happen. Computers are going to break. Somebody on the recently reported that they were on a flight and the person in front of them leaned their seat back and it cracked their screen. And they were like, "Well, is the airline responsible?" And I was like, "Well, if you have travel insurance, just you contact the airline, you tell them if they don't want to pay, then you get your travel insurance involved." And then I think the travel insurance will argue with the airline. I don't know how it works. I know with car insurance, you just tell them that you have an accident, they take care of it, and then they go fight with the other insurance company about it. But that's all I have for this particular one, because insurance is important. Travel insurance is extremely important, whether you like it or not. At some point, something is going to happen, and it's important. Now, make sure you read what coverage you're getting, because sometimes you can pay a little more and increase the amount of coverage. The important thing about this, if you're going international, getting Medevac is very important. One last story, I had a friend, she was in Mongolia. Her son was sick, and they had to get a private jet to take them from Mongolia, I think, to Hong Kong to get treatment. She was sad because her son was sick, but it was kind of excited too because she got to fly in a private jet. So it was kind of interesting. So if you're going to be traveling a lot, do an annual policy. If you're just going to be traveling, by trip, then just do it by trip. Also check your credit card has some sort of travel insurance. So research that to see what your card will cover. Things like car insurance. If you go into like an international country, like if you're going to Jamaica, for example, and I say Jamaica because one of the places that's excluded for American Express. American Express, you can typically use the card to cover the insurance in most countries except, I think it's Jamaica, Japan, Israel, Italy, Ireland, and I think New Zealand is the other one. In these places, the card will not cover you. And but even when I use the card in other places, you just have to check to make sure. Even if you're doing it within the US, sometimes like if you rent with companies like I know Thrifty, even if you tell them that your card is covered, they still want you to pay the insurance. But when I go to countries like in the Caribbean, like when I rent cars in Jamaica, it's $25 a day extra, and I pay that because I don't have to worry about it. Because a lot of these countries, when you go, even if the car's a little scratch in it, they want to take your deposit. But if you have your insurance, the insurance will take care of all that, because that's why you pay the insurance. So don't skimp on that. Don't let your vacation get ruined. You spend $20,000 for your vacation between, it's like a family of four, and between all the food and all the hotels and all the airfares and stuff that you get together. And then you don't want to spend travel insurance, which is probably, let's say, $60 a person. You don't want to spend a little less than $300 for travel insurance to cover all that and not have to worry about it, right? So that's all I have to say about travel insurance. So this is Kerwin with FastRide.com, cruisenautry.com. This has been episode 100. Thank you so much for listening to us. We truly appreciate it. And get insured and have a good flight. Talk to you soon.